Tech stocks erase Monday's gain, dragging the Nasdaq lower ahead of the end of the August inflation print. Apple slides after unveiling the new iPhone model, while Oracle sees its worst day since 2002 following disappointing guidance. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific open mixed. Unemployment rate in South Korea falls to the lowest level since June of 1999. The GIFT Nifty suggests a flat start for the Indian market. Oil prices jump around 2% to a near 10-month high on the back of OPEC's tighter oil supply outlook and stronger demand forecast. Brent tops the $92 a barrel mark. A fall in vegetable prices helps inflation ease to 6.8% in August, even as it cools from a 15-month high. Inflation remains above the RBI's tolerance band. Meanwhile, industrial output grows 5.7%, slightly above expectations. And Apple announces 4 new models of the iPhone, including the iPhone 15 Pro, while choosing not to hike gadget prices. Also unveils the brand new Apple Watch and updated AirPods with a USB-C charger. Good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast. I'm Pavitra. Those are the top headlines that we're tracking for you. Let's talk about the global markets to kick things off and really set the context, because we did get quite a weak handover from the US. Right now, if I look at the Asian markets, it's largely lower, but there are a few which are holding up fine as well. What's looking the worst this morning is the Hong Kong market. That's actually, this is the one which is holding up in the green. So this is looking a lot better. Hong Kong, Taiwan are the two markets which are managing to trade in the green. But apart from that, you're seeing a pretty red screen right now. So Hong Kong is around 0.4% in the green, while you have the Taiwanese index up around 0.3%. Now, the Nikkei market is down around 0.25%. You have the Straits, which is down, not too much, just around 0.2% right now. And Shanghai also seeing a very, very flat open, just a little bit in the red for now. So that's what's really going on across the Asian markets. The GIFT Nifty will come up for you, and it is indicating that the start for our own markets could be very, very flat. We're just around 20 points higher. It has moved a little bit into the green right now in the past few minutes or so, but it is looking like quite a flat start right now for our own markets. It'll be very interesting to see, how the market moves, considering what we saw yesterday. We closed below the 20,000 mark, but the mid and small caps were where all of the pressure came through. So that'll be very interesting to track. That's what's happening in Asia in terms of the setup. But for the US market, Wall Street, like I was pointing out, ended lower on Tuesday, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq really leading the slide. So that was the worst performing of the indices that you can see. 140 points or a whole percent gone on the Nasdaq. You had the other indices also which saw some cuts. So the S&P 500 gave up around 25 points, and the Dow was down around 26 points, around 17 points over there as well. So across the board, a little bit of a weak handover from the US. Now, like I was mentioning, the main pressure point for the market was this entire tech pack, and this was fueled by Oracle's weak guidance. The stock actually saw its worst day that we've seen all the way since 2002, tumbling around 13%. So this really weighed on the Nasdaq. You also had shares of Apple, which dipped in trade after the unveiling of its new iPhone models. Now, in terms of the big cue to watch for the US markets, and what we're all tracking as well, is that the inflation print for August will be released later today. This is for the US, and that is really the key macro data that we do have to track right now. So that's what's happening across the US markets. But on that note, let's listen into Mohammed El Arian, the Chief Economic Advisor of Allianz, talk about the expectations from the inflation report. Hear him out.
The assumption in the marketplace is that inflation will continue to go down, and that we're going to have core well-behaved. Headline may pop up for a little bit, but it will come down. And importantly for policy, that means the pause in September becomes the end of the hiking cycle, and we cut rates next year. That's what the market thinks. What I think is going to happen is headlines going to prove much more complicated. Already you've seen people push up their month-on-month projections of headline all the way up to 0.6, 0.7. I think core inflation will be well less behaved, and then the Fed at the end of the year is going to have a choice. Do we live with 3% plus inflation, or do we crush the economy?
All right, that is the word coming in from Mohammed El Arian. But let's now talk about the setup for our own markets, everything that you should look at this morning, as well as some of the individual stocks that are making news as well. So we have our research team here to really fill us in with the trade setup. Vivek, Surbhi, Nigel are all with me now to prep you up for this trading session. Guys, a very good morning to all of you. And Vivek, coming to you first, the handover is definitely, a little bit weak. The implied open is still positive, but take us through everything we should track.
Well, good morning. What a day, what a difference in sentiment single trading session has made.
All right. I think there seems to be some problem, Vivek, with your audio. We're just going to fix that. But Surbhi, in the meantime, you want to run us through some of the important stock-specific news flow that came through?
Yeah, so let me start with Phoenix Mills. The company has incorporated a wholly owned subsidiary, Orcus Logistics and Industrial Parks. So it's an interesting diversification over there. Next is KEC International. The company wins new orders worth 1,000 odd crores across various businesses. NTPC, the company completes the trial operations of its Telangana super thermal power project. Texmaco Rail, there's a board meeting on 15th of September to consider a fundraise. GE Power, the company has received a purchase order from Vedanta. The base value of this order is 25 crores and the execution timeline is around 14 months. And lastly, Greenfly will also be on our radar. The operations in their wholly owned subsidiary, which is situated in West Africa, is disrupted due to the ongoing process. The company says that it is an uncertain situation currently and difficult to assess the financial impact.
All right, Surbhi, thanks a lot for that entire list of stocks. Vivek, coming back to you now, we were going through all of the cues and you started by telling us about, of course, how the slide on Wall Street was really led by the tech names yesterday.
Well, you're absolutely right. Sharp, stark difference in sentiment, in a single trading session. Like you mentioned, at the start of the show, the US markets too have given quite a muted handover. Nasdaq saw quite a steep sell-off, largely driven by the fact that you saw a sell-off in Apple post the launch event, and also Oracle, given the muted guidance, saw a sharp sell-off. The other important cue that we are tracking today is crude oil prices. Crude oil prices yesterday jumped almost 2%. This on the back of the fact that OPEC, demand guidance continued to remain quite robust, and also production supplies continue to remain quite tight. So at this point of time, Brent futures now hovering around the $92 a barrel mark. Now coming to the Indian markets yesterday, there was a sharp underperformance as far as the broader end of the markets are concerned, and that really was the story of the day. In fact, the mid-cap and small-cap indices that were trending near lifetime highs yesterday saw a very sharp sell-off, and driven by multiple factors and multiple fears, especially a liquidation of a portfolio in a hedge fund. But what actually happened was that the NSE advanced decline ratio weakened quite considerably to 1:8 in favor of the declines. Now, a lot of key events that happened overnight, that will have an impact on our markets. August CPI inflation coming in at 6.83, slightly lower than what the poll was, and July IIP data at 5.7% versus the poll of 5.2%, so slightly better than expectations. Coming to the primary market, RR Cable IPO opens today, an important one to watch out for. EMS IPO, day 3, end of subscription. That particular IPO was subscribed over 75 times. So IPO market activity continues to remain quite robust. Asian markets are weak. GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly gap up start for our own markets.
All right, so slightly higher start, around 20 points higher is where we're at on the GIFT Nifty right now. Vivek, thanks a lot for getting us all of those cues. Finally, let's also talk about how things are really looking on the future side. So Nigel is here to fill us in with all of that action. Hi, Nigel.
Well, hi, good morning, Pavitra. Hope you're doing well in Delhi. But, in terms of the markets, well, yesterday, in fact, was a little bit of a weak session. Maybe the bulls were getting a little bit overconfident. So we had a bit of a pullback from the broader markets, which is par for the course. Now, the uptrend is intact, particularly on the Nifty, though, in fact, it's going to be a bit of a test for both the broader markets, given the kind of selling that you've seen. And a couple of these stocks have really run up. And the IT index, because as you all were mentioning, the Nasdaq was under pressure overnight. What did the FIs do? Well, they added close to around 10,000 long contracts, and now the long positioning goes to around 63%. And as I've been saying, for the last couple of months, we haven't seen this sort of a long positioning. Typically, you like to have some shorts in the system because that's what forces them to cover out, and that's what causes a bit of a bounce. On the Nifty, the options data, well, highest open interest we have at around 20,100 call, and on the put side, 19,900 put. The premium on both of them are around 35 points odd, which brings us to the levels. On the upside, yesterday's high will be a bit of a resistance zone, so 20,100, 20,150. On the downside, you'll see the uptrend is intact, till that 19,850 odd level holds out. And the Nifty Bank, that plays out the weekly expiry today, and the bulls will be counting on the Nifty Bank to hold one end up. Yesterday, we saw some writing at around the 45,600 call, and now that the premium fell from around 250 rupees to around 100 rupees. So we'll keep an eye out on that one. And stocks that we're looking at, well, the new stock that's in the FNO ban, IEX as well as Nalco. While on the flip side, the one that's coming out of the ban will be PNB. So that one could be in for some action. As you all have been stating, the GIFT Nifty suggests a bit of a flattish to a mildly positive start. Back to you.
All right, Nigel, thanks a lot for taking us through how things are looking on the future side as well. But with that, it is time for a short break on the show. When we come back, we're going to shift focus to the macro picture. So we'll talk about the August inflation data that came out and the July industrial production fine print that came through. All of the details on this when we come back. Hey guys, welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. Now let's talk about some of the macro data that came through. So inflation for the month of August came in at 6.8%. This is below what was expected in terms of the economic estimates, but the reading was above, of course, RBI's tolerance band of 6%. Now, food inflation has cooled off and that is now in single digits. And also talking about the industrial output, that accelerated around 5.7%, which is also above expectations. So Lata's here to bring us the fine print of how things looked in the inflation side as well as on industrial production. Lata.
It's the pleasantest set of data that markets and the economy and the policymakers can expect. Growth is a little better than expected in terms of the July industrial output, but more importantly, inflation is a little lower than expected. At 6.83, it's a good, 25 basis points lower than what our poll threw up at 7.08. The July number 7.44, so it's like over 60 basis points lower than the July number, the inflation for August. So this will be greeted by markets and by the policymakers as positive. What has helped this lower than expected inflation is basically vegetable prices. Vegetable prices were 37% higher year on year. This time they are up about 26% year on year, but there has been a fall in August over July. The negatives from the inflation number is that cereals are higher. Cereals are still up about 11.85% and pulses are up over 13%. So those will be the two negative points, negative takeaways. The overall food inflation has come down from 11.5% YOY in July to 9.94% in the month of August. The fact that the two sticky elements, pulses and cereals, are still double digits and quite firmly in double digits is going to worry policymakers. You will continue to expect the Reserve Bank to keep liquidity tight. Even now, the call rate is slightly closer to what you call the MSF rate. It's not at the repo rate because liquidity is tight. It will get tighter because advanced tax payments only will gather steam as we get to September 15th. So you are going to see a cautious central banking activity, keeping liquidity tight. But overall, the number is better than expected, and core inflation, which the central bank tracks very closely, has come in at 4.85, lower than the 4.9 in July. That also will be good news for both markets and the policymakers. But nothing is going to change on the ground. Bond markets still will be captives to liquidity tightening by the central bank. That's the word from the experts. Quickly on industrial output at 5.7% is better than our poll of 5.2%. And what's clicked over there is electricity. Electricity at 8% is a very good number. Manufacturing just 4.6. Within manufacturing, consumer non-durables has done well. It's usually the informal rural sector that's come at 7.4, which is good, but consumer durables has not done well. Consumer non-durables is good largely because of base effect. But overall, the message is positive, both for stock markets and bond markets. Inflation lower than expected should cheer both markets. Growth slightly better than expected should definitely cheer the stock markets.
All right, Lata, thanks a lot for getting us all of that data that we got on the macro front. Clearly a good set coming through. But with that, it is time for another break on the show. When we come back, we're going to talk all about the cues from the commodity markets. Crude has moved up another 2%. So we're going to take you through all of that action in just a bit. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. Now, let's talk about the commodity space now because it is packed with action there as well. So, Manisha joins us with an update. Manisha, it is really once more crude, which is stealing headlines after that 2% kind of up move which we saw overnight.
Oh, absolutely, Pavitra. And a new 10-month highs is where we are trading when it comes to the crude oil prices. Well, the cuts from the OPEC and allies is one part of it, and the crude prices has been taking all support from that. But it also is about now concerns about supplies coming in from Libya and Kazakhstan, which is keeping the prices firm also. And then came in the OPEC report, which has put out strong demand growth for 2023 and for 2024 as well, and that seems to be supporting. A similar report from EIA, which is also talking about a stronger global demand for this year and the next, is also keeping the prices supported, is the reason that you saw a couple of percentage point of gains. The street is now looking for the U.S. Inventory data that comes in today, and the IEA monthly report also comes in today in the evening. So ahead of that, we are looking at strong supports continuing for this sector.
All right, Manisha, thanks a lot for getting us all of those details on the crude space and the crude prices. Of course, doesn't bode very well for our own markets. That could be a little bit of a worry. Crude at around $92 a barrel. But with that, we're going to wind down on this edition of Power Breakfast with the news that Asia is very mixed. The implied open for our own markets, however, is flat, a little bit in the green for now. So looks like the start could be a little bit positive. We'll see how the session pans out from there. Thanks a lot for tuning in to Power Breakfast via Bazaar Morning Call after this short break.